Welcome, everybody. My name is Tim Stewart from Visual Decisions. I'm here with Frank Costa from Sandalwood Engineering and Ergonomics today. We're going to be talking about future-proofing manufacturing architectures with MQTT. Welcome, Frank.
Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Excellent. How are you doing today?
It's another day, buddy. It's another day.
Yes, it is. Why don't you do the standard quick introduction to yourself and Sandalwood, and then we'll hop into things.
Sure. Sandalwood's an engineering consulting firm, 3 lines of business, injury prevention, system engineering, and my group, system integration. So I'm a manager in the system integration group here at Sandalwood, and I've been doing digital transformation work since before it was known as digital transformation work. So we're talking over 25 years. And 21 of those years were spent here at Sandalwood. We specialize in a lot of discrete manufacturing, but have been branching out into pharmaceuticals as well as process manufacturing.
Sounds great. All right, let's get into it. Why don't you kick us off and kind of let us know why we're here?
Yeah, sure. So the reason we have this kind of passion about this topic is, manufacturing is changing faster than our architectures can keep up with. We've kind of all been on those projects. I know you and I have, Tim. We're connecting like a new line to an MES or SCADA system. Just kind of feels like open heart surgery. Or when we're trying to collect data or inject data into business systems, that require custom ETL pipelines, they seem to always break when something changes on the floor. So what I wanted to do today is show you a way to avoid these brittle point-to-point integrations, and instead show you a design of an architecture that scales with you. So you're not constantly starting over when your business or technology needs shift.
Yeah, I mean, we've both seen environments that were just a mess, where you had all kinds of different point solutions, nothing talked to each other. People didn't even know about all the different systems that were there, let alone have logins or be able to access them. Why don't you cover a little bit more about why we need to think about future-proofing the architecture, though?
Sure. And it's key to understand future-proofing doesn't really, mean predicting the future. It means being ready for it. So none of us knows what we'll be asked to connect to or integrate in 5 years. To be honest with you, I don't know what I'm going to be asked to do in the next 6 months. Things are changing so fast. It could be a new ERP system, a new analytics platform, AI, co-pilots for operators. Like, who knows what's coming up? The only constant is, we know plants, people, machines, they're going to be generating copious amounts of data, and that's not going away at any time soon. So I guess the real question is, how do you architect a system so that those data pipelines that are set up once and in such a way that anyone in the organization can use it and architect a modern system with it, sort of engage that citizen engineer.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing has always been important, but with the rise of analytics, several years ago, and with the rise of AI now, it's more important than ever. I mean, I'm working with a company that does agentic AI, and it needs access to the information coming from the different systems. And there has to be some mechanism, some decent integration between those different systems in order for that to take place. And there has to be contextualized information and so forth. So this used to be important. It's critical now.
Yeah. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head, right? The buzz term is AI. And, how does AI consume your plant's information easily, right? How do you stage things to go that way? So it's easy to, easy for that AI consumption. And that's where the concepts of UNS and CDM come into play, right? So these are, I'll get into it more later on. But these concepts, they're all facilitated by, the open source, lightweight MQTT pub sub protocol. So, I guess to get into it, I might as well just sort of define what these two are.
Go ahead. Jump in,
So
man.
yeah, sorry, I switched over. So UNS, probably very familiar with anyone listening. It's unified namespace. So this is all about real-time event-driven communication. So you can think of it as sort of the nervous system of your plant. Data is published once, and then anything that needs to it can subscribe to that data. On the other side is a CDM, or a common data model. And this is all about standardizing semantics. It acts like a dictionary. So if the UNS is a nervous system firing those signals, CDM is a part that says, I don't know, by spindle speed, this is what we need, right? It is not another namespace. It's a structure. It's a schema for data transfer. So each kind of solves a different problem, but together they're really powerful.
Excellent. I think that it's still unclear to a lot of people what the difference is between the common data model and UNS. So why don't we get in a little bit more in depth, I think we have in the presentation, into each one of those different concepts.
Sure.
And,
so
kind of highlight some of the differences there.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, a UNS, it's the unified namespace. It's basically a hierarchy. So it gives real-time, it facilitates real-time transport of information that's scaled, decoupled, and content-rich, right? So when you go through and you look at it, it kind of looks like that file manager tree you have on the side, but it, usually you go through and here to the ISA 95 stack, right? So when you're looking at a tree, you're looking at enterprise, your site, your area, your line, your asset, and then maybe a data type. You don't want to go through and specify in your UNS structure the tag name. But what this does is it gives context and grouping to the information that comes up. So it's easy to go through and in English sort of read what's going on. You kind of know where everything lands, and there's a place for everything, and everything has its place. Works really well, shop floor, real-time data. Now, CDM is different. It may kind of look similar. It passes some of the same data, but it's a framework. So it's not just your real-time, but other applications that understand your common data model can operate and share the same data at the same time, right? So it simplifies data integration, reuse, semantic consistency across systems. It's scalable, and it's not a namespace or a hierarchy. A CDM could just be 3 pages. This is what my schema is going to look like, and when you instantiate that schema, that means not just your SCADA system can understand it, your MES system, your ERP, your quality system, your brand new system coming in. All it has to do is understand what that schema looks like, understand that dictionary, and then you can easily pass information from between different points. And it doesn't have to be used on your SCADA. Your other systems can also go through and use it, because when you have an established CDM, you establish a common vocabulary across the entire footprint of your plant.
Now, I mean, these terms, the namespace and common data model and so forth, both of them have been in use for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Common data model, I know all the way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were talking about a common data model at different companies that I was working for, and setting that common data model up across different applications so that they all had basically the same native data structure that they can pull from and so forth. And common data model has been, something that with data warehouses back in the day, and then data lakes and so forth beyond that, looking at that common data structure and so forth. Namespace, heck, I did coding back in the 90s and early 2000s, where they used namespaces so that you could pull in different libraries and things like that. Are those similar concepts to what they were back in the day and so forth?
Yeah, they are. But I mean, the differences in the uses, I think, comes up there. They're good at what they do, each other, right? So, for example, their purpose. So when we're talking to UNS, that's all about real-time data distribution, where CDM is basically modeling. UNS is very event-driven, so it's great on the pub sub, where the CDM is more transactional. They do work a lot. Their domains are different. Again, when you want real-time data, we're talking operations, IIoT, you're talking on the OT network. The CDM comes into play when you're at the enterprise in the IT side, right? So they kind of play nice on that IT OT border. And again, UNS it's hierarchical, and a CDM, you can use a CDM depending on how you want to, right, as relational tables or entities. So they'll work in a SQL and a NoSQL environment. I don't want to get into which way is easier, but they're schemaless as well. So that kind of tends to the NoSQL side, right? So we're talking a Mongo for long-term story, Redis for something that's quicker. And again, their use cases are different.
Yep.
When you're talking UNS, it's real time. So SCADA, MES, the dashboarding, the CDM is, again, you're looking on the BI side of things. So it's the interaction, not just with the real time stuff, but with some of the operational technologies. So understanding where the two sort of play, where they come into play, is very important. I mean, they work together. UNS, it's agile, while CDM is, trust and consistency. I've said it, and I'll probably say it again. UNS is great for operations and live real-time data. It's hierarchical and event-driven. Well, CDM is a structure and schema-driven, and it's perfectly positioned, again, for the analytics, the reporting, and what we talked about earlier. That consumption by AI, you can feed, if you've got your common data model, you can feed that schema into your AI ingestion pipeline. It'll understand it, and then it can just start consuming all the data that you have at your data lake, your data warehouse. It can automatically start consuming it because it's got that contextualization layer. So when you're using a combination of both UNS and CDM, the operations and the business needs are both kind of covered.
Okay. Tell me if I'm way off with this example. If I've got a machine that I'm monitoring, and I've got some sensors that are hooked up to the machine, and I've got some information coming from the controller and so forth, I'm going to utilize UNS to get that time series information coming from the sensors and from the controller. And I'm going to utilize that to transport that information across to business systems and so forth. The common data model I'm going to utilize to contextualize that information. So as I take that time series information and I turn those signals into meaningful pieces of information. Is the machine running? Is it not running? How many pieces have I produced in the last shift or whatever it is? I'm making predictions off of that data, and I'm storing what those predictions are and so forth. Those higher level chunked information I'm putting into the CDM. The UNS is just taking care of that streaming of that information coming from the shop floor for the most part.
Yeah, right here is just kind of what you're alluding to. I'm going to going to try using this laser pointer and see how it works. So it's exactly right. You've got your data producers here on the left side, and they're being consumed into your platform, right? You could think of Ignition, there's the Aviva, there's ThingWorks. I'm just going to leave it generic and call it a platform. So you're running your real time, you're getting your real time data. You're going through and working on it. This is the level where you actually instantiate that UNS. There are devices that can already be publishing directly to this broker level, and being consumed, right? So there's different ways. This is by no means a very detailed architecture. It's very high level. But once you instantiate that UNS and you drop it down at the broker, you make it available, right? You've got your structure, your real-time data, you're publishing that data down. When it's at the broker, it can be consumed by basically anything, right? So at this point, you'd have these ETL transforms that would consume the data and actually take the UNS, right? The data being pushed by the UNS, and reconfigure it, translate it into that CDM model where it can sort of sit at the data lake or data warehouse level, and then it can be used for streaming. Once you're there at this common model, it's not just the real-time data that's getting piped in there. You could have your quality system, this ERP, your MES, your other systems would sort of follow the same sort of map where there'd be an ETL transform from the raw data into the central repository. Because once it's at this level and all these systems understand the CDM, that means they can go ahead and actually consume that data. So an example would be, you talk about it. You're running a machine on the line. I've got a specific part type. Hey, I want to understand what the BOM for this part type is. In the past, you'd have to go out, you query the ERP system or your BOM system. It might be built in, it might not. You get a different response. You do the translation, and each one of those systems needs a translation layer here. That's kind of gone because that information is going to have that CDM structure schema applied to it and stored in the warehouse. So you're no longer having to make custom translations. You're going down, your CDM is known, you know how to translate it, and you're picking up that information straight from that data lake or data warehouse, whatever your structure looks like. And the same can be done with anything that uses maybe an API, a REST API. If we're using different data, if you apply again those low level or lightweight ETL transforms to instantiate that CDM and save it, that makes everything available across your plant. So this way you can keep in the UNS, it keeps the shop floor agile. The CDM, what it's doing, it's instantiating that business consistency. Every system knows where to look. And because it's a dictionary, you can add to it and make changes. So you're never destroying. You just keep adding to what those definitions are. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Nope, you go for it.
Well, this all makes sense to me. You and I have worked with a lot of different systems over the years that essentially do this kind of thing. But what this is doing is it's creating a more open architecture that allows you to connect to whatever you want, transport that information through MQTT, utilize the UNS so that you can unpack that information coming from the shop floor. Let's talk a little bit more, as you are putting up here, about the benefits of combining that UNS with the CDM and what that can enable for the organization.
Yeah, I'm going to go through the benefits, and then I'm actually, if you're okay with it, I'd like to just kind of step through how we went through it and get that done, right? So when you combine UNS and CDM, you are, again, getting the best of both worlds. That's that real-time visibility for the operators and the engineers. You're getting that semantic consistency for analysts and executive. And this is everything here is decoupled architecture. So it's resilient to change. That is the most important part, right? Scalability without rework every time you add a new line or a new system or a new use case. When you use, especially on the CDM, because that's getting more on the business side of things, it's a structure, it's a schema, it's a way all the systems understand what they're doing and understand where the data is coming from.
Yep.
So, and to go through and do that, we've done this in several places, right? This is a basic architecture. I'll just run real quickly because I know time is of the essence. There are 4 phases. Establish that UNS and plan for the CDM. Phase 2 is instantiate that CDM transform. Then you can establish your BI analytics and then open it up for third-party APIs and interface development. So just quickly, you know, going through the UNS, if you're starting a digital transformation path, you're modernizing your system, use the CDM. It gives you a common area for real-time data to work in. So establish that namespace, make sure you standardize the naming, and group your data in the UNS by contextual categories, right? So understand what you want. Doesn't mean it ends, because it's iterative. It can be, but at a certain point, you need to know what you want, instantiate that in the UNS. So we're talking, you want your status, the performance examples, your process, quality, maintenance. Those are nice little basic categories that sort of everything can sort of fall into. Make sure that you're using a common timestamps. So the ISO 8601 timestamp, and make sure you understand the units of measure, right? So the easiest way to do that, use UCT time. You can go to milliseconds, and then you don't have to worry about converting time zones. Your platform can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I've had a customer that had a laboratory information management system, and the operator on first shift would enter percentages as 89.6%, and the operator on second shift would enter it as 0.896, both valid, but you really need to standardize because the metrics look really weird.
Yeah, 0.86 is different than 86 point. Yeah, we've been down there.
Yep.
We've been down that road. So once you've got the UNS, right, you want to go through and create that mapping from the UNS to the CDM. You can always go CDM to UNS, but typically when we're seeing this sort of thing, it's real time to the floor, and then we want to start sharing that information. And then the CDM outside of the floor type data sort of builds on its own. So the easy way is to mirror the topping dates in the CDM fields where possible. Create a mapping matrix so it's easy to everyone understand where the data is going. You don't have to do it by tag. It can be by group, because that's kind of the power of a CDM. If I've got, I don't know, performance metrics and I'm using this example, tool position X. There's X, Y, and Z, and I say Z because I'm Canadian. There might be a tool position Baker. You know what? You can add it in under the performance matrix, under the UNS, depending on how your ETL transforms are set up. It might not care what actual piece of information you want. It just needs to know where it's got to put that in the CDM. That's how you actually keep it flexible. And so you're not constantly going through and rewriting some of those specs. This is where the establishment of the UNS and that CDM mapping is so important. And this is an example of what you go through and do. So here we have our UNS path, our CDM entity. You don't have to keep it status. You map them the same. These are, you can think of them as the groups or the keys. And then you have the field. You might specify fields that come in, or again, when you get to a process and a step, you can go that next step underneath and basically say anything that comes as a child of these is consumed under the work order, and those can be set up dynamically. It's a simple mapping, especially when we're talking UNS to CDM, but you do want to think about it when you're going through and establishing the two.
I imagine that there's a fair amount of art that goes along with the science here.
For sure. Yeah,
And,
you got to know what you want to. You want to start off nice and targeted. You need to have those people involved that know what's going on, right? So when you're going through establishing it, people on the floor, your operators, the engineers, the line level engineers, super important to understand. But you also need that input from, we'll call it the C-suite, the upper level of the operations. They're interested in sort of, if you looked at a Venn diagram, there's a big portion that both sides are interested in.
Right.
But if I'm an engineer or maintenance on the floor, I need to know certain things about how it's running so I can plan or address issues. If I'm up at corporate, I'm looking for other sort of metrics to sort of tell how I'm doing. Are we hitting production? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, and having that understanding of what are the uses you're going to make of this information when you get started probably helps you create this structure and this mapping more effectively.
For sure. Always start with the UNS. Yeah. So just real quickly, the last two, the BI tools and third parties. Once you have everything landed in that data lake, then the business for internal use is the next logical step. And then again, third-party APIs, which can be facilitated by your data lake, your data warehouse ends as well, right? As I'm seeing time is coming up, I do want to go through and quickly go through some lessons learned that we talked about, right?
Right.
Don't boil the ocean. Start with one line, one machine, one use case. It'll be your longest one, but as you progress through your transformation process, you will accelerate in deployment. I think I've mentioned it a gazillion times, right? Design your UNS hierarchy carefully. If you do get sloppy at that level, you brought up some points, it will haunt you down the road. And haunt is the proper term. And with that, don't treat the CDM as an afterthought. Even if you're not ready to go through and implement one, just plan it in the UNS. It doesn't take that long, and it'll help you, again, when you move to the next phase of your project. And the last one I alluded to, none of this is technology project. Get your IT, get your OT, and get your business stakeholder aligned early and invested. When you do that, it just promotes engagement and ownership and makes things just run smoother. So just to wrap it up, I'll say it again, UNS gives you that operational agility. CDM gives you that business intelligence. And your platform should be flexible enough to bridge the two concepts and orchestrate them. So together, UNS and CDM give you a manufacturing architecture that scales, adapts, and lasts. So that's kind of my spiel.
All right. We don't have any questions from the audience in the queue here. So thank you, Frank, as always. Fantastic job. And look forward to the next time that we have a chance to get together and chat about another topic.
Always a pleasure, Tim. Thanks.
All right. If you have questions listening to this, either in the recording or anything else, feel free to reach out to the Sandalwood team. The contact information is right there on the screen. The handy QR code on the right side will make that real easy for you. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.